I love what just happened in worship for me. So Friday, I had a hard day on Friday. I don't know, those of you who know me know that I'm in a situation with my mom, who's not here today, so I'm not going to talk badly about her, but she does have dementia. And I've been living with her for a while, and my kids have been there with me. Alan is there some of the times, and we're working on getting him over there full time too. But Friday morning, I had a rough one. Anyone who's been down that road of dementia or Alzheimer's with a parent, you know what I'm talking about. You understand why tears are forming in the back of my mind, in the back of my head, and in my voice. And during part of it, Isaac, who happened to be the one who was singing here, came up to me and just hugged me. I was sweaty, I was gross, I was mad, I was hurt, I was all these emotions that were just oozing all out of me, and he just hugged me. And he just stayed there for a minute, and I, of course, like bawled and whatever, and no words were spoken. It was just that he was there, right? And what just happened for me in worship is that exact same thing. I feel a little gross. I feel a little unprepared. I burned my shirt this morning while I was ironing it, so I had to come up with a different shirt. I just like, do you guys ever have those mornings where it's not quite going? It's just not quite on the track that you feel like you should be on, and it just seems like, okay, I'm going to tell my mom one more time. I love her. I came out this morning, and my hair, when I do it in the morning, I have to do it like kind of curly, because once I start moving and sweating, it kind of falls. Does that make sense? Like I have to do it kind of bigger. And then within an hour or so, it settles down into a good spot. Or I walked out this morning, my mom goes, you need to comb your hair. I was like, oh. I burned my shirt. My mom told me, Alan told me I needed lipstick. I mean, it's like all the things, not quite going. But he told me I had to change my shoes too. But what happened to me in worship was God gave me that sweet little hug. That hug that was just like Isaac. And when we sang those words, I don't even remember exactly what the words are, but it talked about being surrounded. I'm surrounded by you. I'm a here now kind of person. Like if I'm not in the room with you, I may not be thinking about you. It's hard for me to get there, But what I felt this morning, what I thought God was maybe even kind of like, hey, are you listening? When we were singing that song about being surrounded, I don't always know or feel like I'm surrounded by God. Do you guys know? Like, sometimes you feel really alone in it, right? Sometimes you feel like, okay, where are you, God? Like, I know you're here, I know I'm in you and you're in me, but I don't feel it at all. And this will make a little more sense when I actually get to the message this morning, but being here together with you, you are him surrounding me. Does that make sense? A little bit? You're the physical that I don't always see and feel and know. But you being here this morning, you singing those words with me, us talking about trusting God and failing, and Lauren talking about it's hard, and like, we're here together, and that is God with us, in us, right? Didn't plan on saying any of that, but thank you so much for being here. Thank you for giving of your time, getting up early, maybe burning your shirt like I did when you're trying to iron it. I don't know, but thank you guys. You guys are awesome. I'm so incredibly thankful to have a place like this, to come and to just be real and know that together, because of what we celebrate, because of what we have in common, because our common belief in God, that we can come here and just kind of instantly connect, right? And so thank you for that. Thank you. So last time I was here, back in June, we talked about the apocalypse. For those of you who were here, you remember that, unfortunately, if you were the person that wanted me to talk about like end times and dig into all of that kind of stuff, we didn't do that at all. And this time, if you notice on your bulletins, the title of my message is The Post apocalypse. And once again, we are not going to talk about end times. So I'm really sorry for those of you who wanted to kind of dive into that. We're not. And what I did share with you last time is about what that word apocalypse really means. Words have, we have to be careful with our words. I heard someone say the other day that words don't have meaning, people do. So it's the people who use the words that put the meaning to the word, right? Now we have dictionaries and I get all of that, but we can use words and they don't necessarily mean what the dictionary says. For instance, if I said Alan literally died laughing, you would know that what I meant. You would know that I was talking about him laughing hard. But those of you who are English teachers or English enthusiasts would know I just used that word incorrectly, literally, right? And if somebody from, let's say, a couple thousand years from now reads that word and they look it up in the dictionary, and they try to figure out what it means, they would think that Alan actually died. Because the word literally actually means an event happened without exaggeration. Did you know that? It means an event that actually happened, with zero exaggerating. Now, if I say Alan literally died, like I'm exaggerating, right? Anyway, words are important. Apocalypse is one of those words that's important. What we talked about last time was that the ancient Greek word, apocalypsis, is in the New Testament about 18 times. Paul uses it 13 of the 18. And what it means is a revelation. It means an unveiling, an uncovering, a bringing light to darkness, which is not how we see the word apocalypse, right? The word apocalypse that we know, that we use in the English, actually means a complete and final destruction of something. And it's really interesting to me that in the Oxford Dictionary, it actually points to the definition of that apocalypse, that end of the world kind of a thing. And it points to where they got that is from the last book of the Bible, which is Revelation. And it's just really interesting to me that these words that have nothing to do with, their meanings have nothing to do with each other, but they're twinsies. They're Twinkies, right? Apocalypsis and apocalypse. And it's just been really fun. And the last little bit of review is from last time that we talked about Paul's apocalypse was that his revelation was that he understood that Jesus was the Messiah, and then that God's plan was bigger and better than he ever imagined. So, and it was all about the inclusion of the Gentiles into the promise and the plan and the purpose of God. So that's kind of what we talked about last time. Apocalypse was kind of going over all of that. This time, I'm that person that I love learning things, but I really love the what now part of it. I love to learn. I love these little neat fun things. But then I want to think about. I want to talk about. I want to see how those things that we have learned can actually translate into life. And so all summer I've been in the book. I was in the book of Ephesians, doing kind of this little online class thing. It was kind of fun. And the book of Ephesians really lays itself out to the first couple of chapters. The first 3 chapters are kind of about this apocalypse, and the last 3 really are about how Paul's life and maybe even our lives can be different kind of post-apocalypse. Does that make sense? And I don't really want to teach you anything today. I don't have anything that I'm going to bring to you that's going to be like, wow, that was so good. I don't have anything like that. I just really want to talk about this with you. I want to think about it with you. I would love to hear your thoughts on it afterwards. Because it's something that's not quite settled in me yet, but it's working itself out in me. Most of us in this room do share Paul's revelations, right? That Jesus is the Messiah and that God's promise is bigger than we thought. Maybe if we've been in church for a while, we take these revelations for granted. It's kind of like, yeah. It's not that, I've been talking about Jesus since I can remember, right? Maybe like some of you, Jesus is the Messiah, Son of God. That doesn't it's not necessarily an apocalypse for some of us, but for Paul it was. It flipped his whole entire world upside down. It flipped it, Maybe some of you who became believers a little later in life, maybe you've had that experience, but for some of us, it's like, I believe it, but it hasn't flipped our lives around so much. But it's good to remember that these things were really big deals. What's really interesting to me is what Paul was like before his apocalypse and what Paul was like after. And I think there's something, and we can look at his life and what it was like before and look at his life and what it was like afterwards, and we can see and we can be reminded about the massiveness of these apocalypses. Most of what we know about Paul and his pre-apocalypse life is what he tells us about it. We don't know a ton, but he does tell us about it. And what we know is that post-apocalypse, afterwards, his whole posture and his perspective changed massively on so many different things. How he saw himself and how he saw others shifted. It really did. In pre-apocalypse, we saw a Paul who had an absolute improper pride. He had an improper pride that changed to a profound humility. And what we know about his improper pride is what he told us about it. He told us, these are his words from his letters that he wrote. If anyone had good reason to put confidence in human credentials, it was me. I was a Hebrew among Hebrews. I lived according to the law of the Pharisees and was advancing above all of my contemporaries. Does this sound like a guy like you that you want to hang out with? No, right? Nobody wants to hang out with him. And now, the next one I read, you're really not going to want to hang out with him. My zeal for the traditions of my ancestors and my God, the way I understood him, led me to savagely march into people's homes and arrest them. He was like full of it. And this is my favorite, and according to the righteousness stipulated in the law, I was blameless, Paul said. Come on, Paul, you weren't blameless according to what was stipulated in the law. No one can do it. In fact, I'm pretty sure that the reason the law is there is to show us that we can't do it. But Paul was boastful. He said these things of himself. He was prideful. It was improper. It was all about him and what he did, his religion and what he believed and what he thought. But post-apocalypse, when he realized that Jesus was the Messiah, it's not that Paul's personality changed all that much. He was still gruff. He was still that guy that kind of got in your face and did things you didn't want him to do and said things that you wish he didn't say. He was still that guy. And he still boasted. He boasted all the time. But what he boasted in massively shifted. He boasted in what Jesus did, not what he did. He boasted in his weaknesses, not in all the things that he was good at. His pride, his boasting, it shifted massively. And I think that we can learn something from that. I think that this posture of humility, the way that it changed him and the way that it changed the way he saw people, I think that's a good thing for us to note. It's a good thing for us to note. It's not about what we do, but it's about what God has done for us. Pre-apocalypse Paul, can you say that? Pre-apocalypse Paul was someone who was a free imprisoner, right? He was a free imprisoner who changed to an imprisoned freer. Right? Paul imprisoned people because they believed in something that made no sense to him at all. It made no sense to him. It bothered his religious sensibilities to the point where he was willing and ready and wanted to get rid of them and to captivate them. He thought he was taking people captive so it would stop the spreading of the good news. That's what he was all about, taking people captive. But instead, post-apocalypse Paul proclaimed freedom to the very ones that he once threatened. And he did so literally from prison, right? Literally from prison he did. And as a prisoner, Paul understood that nothing, no created thing whatsoever, nothing could hinder him from proclaiming the gospel. He was in prison, but nothing could stop him from the freedom of proclaiming Jesus. What else we know about pre-apocalypse Paul is that he was a church destroyer, wasn't he? He was out to destroy the church. And post-apocalypse, he turned into a church planter. He attempted to destroy the church before, but after, he took every opportunity to spread the good news and plant churches all around the Mediterranean. Some of you have been on that cruise where you go and visit all the churches, right, that he planted. And we're still feeling that today. We're still benefiting from his freedom and his work and his humility today. From experience, Paul knew that God's purpose could only be fully expressed when people were united together. That's why he planted the churches. So his posture of humility allowed him to care for people as he'd never done before. His imprisonment couldn't stop him from proclaiming freedom. And his experience taught him that God's purpose could only be fully expressed when people were together. When people who had no business getting together, when those people got together, something special happened. And based on Paul's writings, we can see that for us, post-apocalypse, our posture and our perspective can and probably should change too. There really is something about this together thing. And this is the thing that right now, that's just this is the thing I'm a little bit unsure about. I'm not quite 100% sure how this works out. Do you guys remember when I shared with you about Ephesians, whenever you read the word you in Ephesians? It's y'all, right? So it's plural. Every single time in the book of Ephesians, when you read you, it's you plural, it's y'all. And this is the thing that's got me I can't quite land the plane yet because I'm thinking about y'all. Paul's apocalypse, part of it, was about the coming together of people who have no business being together. And it's not just for together's sake. Like a number of years ago on our 25th anniversary, I got Alan and myself shirts that say better together. And it was really cute, and we took our family picture, and it was great. It's not just about being together. It is better, but there's something else that happens that Paul is trying to show us and trying to teach us, and I think it's really cool. I believe that together we can live humbled. Together, I believe that we can live humbled by what we've been given. I'm going to go through a list of things in Ephesians 1, just again, because that's where I've been at all summer. And it's pretty cool what God has given us. He's given us. Ephesians 1:2 says we've been given grace and peace. Ephesians 1:3 says we've been given a blessing. Ephesians 1:4 says together we've been given holiness and that blamelessness that Paul was trying to get for himself. We've been given holiness and blamelessness together in love. That's pretty awesome. Ephesians 1:5 says we've been given adoption into a loving family. I don't know if you guys know, both Isaac and Molly, both of our kids are adopted. They're only 4.5 months apart. Together, they were adopted around the same time, right? They were adopted together. That is a bond between them that can't be shaken because they were adopted into a family together. That's us. We've been adopted into a family together. It's an awesome picture. Together, Ephesians 1:6 says, we've been given a glorious grace. Ephesians 1:7, we've been given together. Together, we've been given redemption and forgiveness. You have as much forgiveness as I do. And together, we have a lot. We have a lot of forgiveness in this room. It's massive. Think about all the things you've been forgiven for. Add that up with all the things everybody else in this room has been forgiven for. That's a lot of forgiveness. That's a lot of grace. That's a lot of holiness and blamelessness. It's a lot. Ephesians 1:8 says we've been given together lavish wisdom and insight. Did you know we're smarter, wiser together than we are on our own? I don't know. That's pretty awesome to think about. Some of you guys I know are really smart. And there's a lot of holes that you can fill that I have in my head because you're so smart and you're so good at things. That's a really cool picture of a family operating together. Ephesians 1:9 says, together we've been given a revelation, an apocalypse. And the list goes on. I just stopped there because I thought you might get bored with all of that. Felt like a lot. But these words, they're like a little mini thesaurus, right, of all the, fancy Christian words, all the good Christian words that we use, blessing and all of that kind of stuff. And we've taken them for ourselves a lot of times. We've taken them for ourselves. But it's pretty cool to think about what it means together, that together we have received these things. They're so much bigger. And friends, can we just say that we can humbly recognize what we've been given? And we can, from that posture of humility, generously care for each other more because of what we've been given? I don't always know how to do it, but maybe together we can get somewhere with it, don't you think? I believe that post-apocalypse, together we can live captivated by God's love. From what I'm just going to gather this morning, none of us right here, at least in this room, are literally imprisoned. Right? We're not in prison here. Maybe there's somebody watching live stream. Maybe somebody will watch this a long time from now and be in prison. And if that's you, we love you. Send us an email or watch your back. But us in this room, we're not actually imprisoned, right? But we are being held captive to God's love. It's got us. It's not going to let us go. Isn't that awesome to be imprisoned, to be captivated by something so fantastic, by God's love? There's nothing we can do to break out of that. And so I'm going to read another list, this time from Ephesians 2, just to kind of keep us going, of all the things that it says that, again, together that we have received, the things that we have together. Ephesians 2:4 says we have God's great love together. We have God's great love. 2:5 says we've been made alive together. We've been made alive together. 2:6 says we've been raised together. We're seated together. Ephesians 2:7 says we've been given a surpassing wealth of kindness. A surpassing wealth of kindness together. I think that's pretty awesome. Ephesians 2:8 says, together we've been saved by grace. 2:9 says, nothing is by our works. It's not anything that any one of us has done. Not any one of us has done anything good enough to get us saved. Nothing that we've done is good enough to boast about either. And this next one, this is the one that's like floating. And it kind of blew my mind as I saw it differently than I've seen it before. Ephesians 2:16 says, we've together been reconciled together in one body through the cross, by which the hostility or the enmity has been killed. Did you hear that there? It's not the enemy in this verse. Through the cross, it's not the enemy that was destroyed. It's the enmity. It's the hostility between us. What Paul was talking about back then was the hostility between the Jews and the Gentiles. It's been killed, it was killed on the cross. Oh, I want to participate in that. I don't want to be hostile towards my husband. I don't want to be hostile towards my kids or any of you or anyone out there. Ah, what a beautiful thing to think about, the power of the cross killing that. I want to know how to participate in it. I don't always. There's a lot of emotion that goes on in here. And sometimes emotion comes out in a way I don't want it to. I wish I could tap into that remembrance of what Jesus took on himself when he was on the cross, what went with him to the grave, and what he left behind when he rose again. I want to be able to hold on to that. I want to see that, and I need y'all to help me. I can't do this one by myself. In isolation, this one has nowhere to go, right? I mean, I can be mad at myself a little bit, but I don't know that I get hostile towards myself. I don't know. You do, Jay? Or you disagree with me? I can get hostile with other people. And you guys can help me figure this one out. Together, we can figure this one out. But not in isolation. And not with just people who agree like we do. That would be easy. How is it that, Alan and I actually don't fight a lot. We actually are, in a lot of ways, really similar. And we don't fight a ton. That's easy, though, kind of. There's not a lot of hostility that we have to work out there. But when I meet up with things out there that I do feel hostility towards, for whatever reason, it's good to know that I can come back in here with y'all and go, okay, wait a minute. Can we recalibrate? Can we refocus? Can we remember what it is we've been given? Oh yeah. Can we be a little bit more humble? Can we be a little bit more caring and a little bit more generous? Let's not live imprisoned to enmity. I say that wrong every single time. Let's not live in prison to enmity, but share in the freedom that Jesus died and lived again to give us. Freedom gives us the ability to be different, to think differently, to believe differently, to live differently. That's a freedom that we have. But the cross calls us to do so without enmity. And together, we can be a part of something bigger and better than we've ever imagined. It's something bigger and better than ourselves, isn't it? Moving on to Ephesians 3. Ephesians 3:14 says that we are a part of a bigger family. We're a part of a family where God is our one good Father. And we are all brothers and sisters in Christ. As our kids reached adolescence, they kind of naturally started fighting more. Anybody experience that when your kids get a little older? Like when they're young, they play together and they do all the fun things together. And then when they get older, that's when the kind of big fights start happening. At least that was how it was in our family. And I remember sitting them down and, I wasn't hostile or passionate about this at all, but I sat them down and I was like, you two need to figure this out. Figure it out. Because when Daddy and I are dead and you're old, who are you going to talk about how crazy we were together? It's like they need to be friends so that they can share all the common stories together about how crazy we are. Right? We're crazy. They need to be friends so they can share in those stories together. Now, Of course, God's not that way. We're not sitting around talking about how crazy God is, or at least some of us aren't. Matt did a couple weeks ago when he talked about how crazy the father was in the prodigal son story, right? Maybe we can talk about craziness of God that way. His love for us, what he did for us. Yeah, he's crazy. He's crazy good. He's crazy kind. He's crazy loving. He's crazy generous. And who better to talk to it about than our brothers and sisters? And then when we tell those stories and we share those things together, guess what? That makes it easier to do, to go out there and tell the same stories, to talk to someone who maybe isn't a part of the family yet, and we get to tell them those stories and we can invite them in. And that is the cool thing about God's family, is that everyone has a seat at that table. Everyone's invited to come in and partake in those family stories. And it's wonderful. We are a part of a family that's bigger than we can imagine. We're a part of an understanding of something that is bigger. Ephesians 3:16-19 says this, and I'm going to read it with the y'alls. It says this, just so you can hear it. I pray that according to the wealth of his glory, he will grant y'all to be strengthened with power through his Spirit in the inner person, that Christ will dwell in y'all's hearts. I did not know how to punctuate that word, y'all's hearts. Through faith, so that y'all have been rooted and grounded in love. Y'all will be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and thus know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, that y'all will be filled up to all the fullness of God. Did you guys hear it in there? The breadth, the length, the height, the depth of God's love can only be understood together in the context of y'all. What I understand is this little piece. And when you add your piece and everyone else adds their piece, that's when we begin to get the picture of the magnitude of the goodness of this God that we love and who's our Father and that we have given ourselves to, together with all the saints. I love this so much. It's why we go to church. We actually talk about that all the time here. Like, it's our job, like, to do church. But if we don't know why to do church, this all becomes really, really hard. But knowing why, knowing that the more people that come in, the more we understand, the more we see the depth of God. Like, that's a reason to have church. These verses are not about me being rooted and grounded in God's love. It's a neat idea that I am rooted and grounded in God's love. This is about all of us, how we are all rooted and grounded in God's love. Speaking of being rooted and grounded, do you guys know about the Pando aspen tree? How many of you guys know about aspen trees? Oh, not many of you. Aspen trees, if you didn't know, aspen trees are not individual organisms, right? It's not one aspen tree, two aspen tree, three aspen trees. Aspen trees are part of a grove that all have one common root ball. So there's one in Utah called Pando. It's the single largest living organism in the world. It's made up of thousands of aspen trees. It's some 80,000 years old. Each tree is genetically cloned to the other tree. Now, they end up growing a little differently based on where the wind and the sun and all that kind of stuff. They might look a little different, but genetically they're the same. They're all part of the same root ball. They're interconnected in their rooting and their grounding. And while one aspen tree is beautiful and the story that it tells is like something worthy of taking pictures of, it's that massive tree, that massive living organism that we, that are in pictures everywhere and fall's approaching and, we all want to go see. Their united story is something that is so much more powerful than their individual story. It's their united story that really tells us something and that makes the world look at. Makes the world, they travel to go see those aspen trees, right? Because they're so magnificent. A unified, but not uniform body is something that we are here. We're unified, but we're not uniform, are we? Ephesians 4:4-6 says, let's count the ones together. There is one body, one spirit, just as you two were called to the one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. How many ones? 7. Does that number mean anything to those of you who have read your Bible? 7 is the number of completion. There's something complete about 7 ones, about one. There's something complete. But I love this next verse. Ephesians 4:7-16. But, we got to pay attention to those little words, but. To each one of us, grace has been given according to the measure of Christ's gift. Yes, we are one and it is complete, but each one of us is important too, and we've each received a measure of God's grace. From him, the whole body grows, fitted and held together through everything, every supporting ligament, and each one does his part. It is united. We are united. But we are not necessarily uniform, right? To each one of us, God has given us different giftings, different personalities, different mind styles on the way our brains work. And it's the together of all of those things that are pretty cool. I mean, Paul talked about how weird would it be when he was comparing us to a body. Like, how weird would it be if we were all ears? Who would then see? If we were all eyes, who would then hear? We are a part of an understanding and a family and a body, and only together, operating in our individuality, right? Do we experience the breadth and length and height and depth of God and his love. And again, it's not just about the togethers, it's about understanding who he is. And living post-apocalypse for us means that our perspective and our posture needs to change. We can humbly recognize all that we've been given. We can live not being imprisoned by enmity. We can live according to God's love and his grace. And we can remember that we're family. And only as a family can we experience how good he is. And from the bottom of my heart, you guys, thank you for being a part of this body, a part of this understanding, a part of this family. It really is a pretty unique and special thing. And with that, let's pray. Dear God, thank you so much for who you are, for being the kind of God who understands us, who loves us. Lord, thank you for giving us each other so that we can learn and we can love and we can see more of who you are. God, you are awesome. Help us to go today remembering that. Help us to go today loving one another better. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.